Rumours that are circulating at the moment about driver moves up and down the paddock. Just how distracting is it to focus on putting in strong performances at the same time as negotiating your future?
Well, it can be a really big distraction, particularly for the drivers who are out of contract at the moment. And for them, it's going to be the challenge of managing what they're doing off track and compartmentalizing that from what happens on track, because we know that this next decision in their career is going to be a big one. So that can put a lot of pressure on your shoulders, but you don't want that to put so much pressure on your shoulders that you start overdriving, making mistakes, because you know in this sport, you can go from hero to zero in an instant.
I mean, easier said than done, Ant. And as we pass by a driver now who's considering their future, even if you've got a contract, they're not necessarily even worth the paper they're written on. You've got to keep putting in really big, impressive performances.
It's an industry that demands perfection from not just the team, but the drivers as well, first and foremost. So if you start to relax in any way, even if you have a multi-year deal in place, like you say, not worth the paper it's written on, because you can be kicked out before you know it. If the performances start to slip, the team will have their eye on you straight away and you'll be out the door.
So no room for complacency. Let's see who can put in some big performances on track today. All the action up next. Don't go anywhere. Fully immersed in the beautiful Ardennes forest in Belgium, surely one of the most iconic tracks of them all, it's practice time here at Spa-Francorchamps.
All right, give me a quick radio check, please. Radio check. With conditions as they are, I'd suggest you take a set of full wets. I've had a chat with the R&D team about the new parts, and we're happy that they've been integrated into the car okay. With any luck, you'll be able to feel the improvement, so go and give them a try. Track is wet right now. Feel your way around the conditions before you start pushing the car. Okay, in these kind of conditions, you're going to be driving into a lot of spray when there's a car ahead of you. Pirelli's full wet tyre can shift around 65 litres of water every second, and a lot of that's going to end up on your visor. With that in mind, make sure you give other cars plenty of room. There's no need to risk the car too much in this session, okay? ETA on this rain clearing up is about 10 minutes, so just keep your concentration out there, you're doing well.
High-speed straights, heady elevation changes and dramatic corners. What is there not to love about today? It's qualifying day here at Spa-Francorchamps.
Okay, radio check, radio check. All set, we're ready to go, so let's get the car out onto the track. We've been pushed down to P22. I'm afraid we've dropped to P22, P22.
And that's it for sprint qualifying. Plenty more coming up over the rest of the weekend. So we'll see you all tomorrow. Forget pit stops, forget fuel management. It's pedal to the metal all the way here as we get ready for today's sprint. Spa-Francorchamps then, a historic 19-corner circuit with a lap distance of 4.35 miles. There's over 100 metres of elevation change here, and with long stretches of the lap spent flat out, a good top speed will be vital for success. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. Sonny Hayes lines up on pole position, and Max Verstappen lines up alongside. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Leclerc, Hamilton, Carlos Sainz, and Russell, Antonelli, Bortoletto, Piastri, and Yuki Tsunoda, Pierce, Gasly, Nico Hülkenberg, and Albon, Norris, Ocon, Jack Doohan, and Fernando Alonso, Behrman, Lawson, Stroll, and Isaac Hadjar rounds off the grid. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We'll soon find out. And alongside me today, former Formula One driver and former world champion too. See, told you I'd give you a big intro. Anthony Davidson, hello. Well, they say that a change is as good as a rest, and whilst there's not much rest on show in the sprint format today, there's definitely a change to what we're usually seeing on the track. Now, I'll be generous here. It's not that long ago that you were racing and entertaining us on a Sunday, but in the years since, the sport has changed quite a bit, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has, Crofty. You know, the cars have got bigger, they're heavier, but critically, there's more downforce to play with as well now. There was about 4 tons of downforce on the car at 300 kilometres an hour when I drove. You're now looking more towards 5 tons of downforce. So there's a big difference in performance. But because of that, the car being heavier and bigger, you've got to drive in a smoother way. You've got to look after it a bit more. You've got to nurse it through the slow speed corners more. They were much more nimble, agile machines when I drove in Formula 1 compared to now.
Okay, let's have a comms check, please. Radio check. Okay, here we go. I know what you can do. Don't let me down. No rain expected, no rain expected for the time being. Okay, incredible parking there, nice one. That's going to give you the edge if you can get good launch as the race starts. Okay, so that's the rest of the grid forming up now. Be patient and watch for those lights. They're on fresh mediums. They're in 11th. No threat of rain for the time being, conditions look good. Dries definitely seem like the fastest tyre at the moment. Okay mate, final lap. Keep your concentration and let's bring it home. Yes mate, I'll take that. Well done. We're really happy with the podium down here, so well done. Yes!
So that wraps up the sprint race, but there's still more action yet to come this weekend. We've got qualifying and, of course, the Grand Prix.